How are you, class? I hope you're good and fantastic. I'm fantastic myself. Right, without wasting any time, I want us to start with the endocrine system. With my class, we've already done the nervous system, which includes the brain, eye, and your ear. Right, we've already finished that topic. So this week, we're starting with the endocrine system. So, what is the endocrine system? Endocrine system is just a system of glands that secrete hormones directly into the blood and transports those hormones into or to target organs, right? So those hormones are transported to target organs. I hope that makes a lot of sense. I'll repeat that again. It's a system of glands, right? It's composed of glands which secrete hormones into the blood, and those hormones are transported through the bloodstream to the target organs. And by target organ could be any organ, right? Could be your kidney, could be your thyroid gland, and etc. As this lecture progresses, we're going to find out more about those target organs, right? Okay. But before we start with the endocrine system, I want us to differentiate between the nervous system and the endocrine system. What's the difference between the two? As we've defined the endocrine system, that it's just a system of glands that secrete hormones directly into the blood, right? And those hormones are transported right through the blood to the target organs. Okay. So what's the difference between the nervous system and the endocrine system? So with regards to the nervous system allows you to respond quickly to a stimulus. So you're able to respond rapidly to a stimulus. What is a stimulus? Remember, we said a stimulus is a change to the external environment. So a change in the external environment is a stimulus, right? Okay, now the endocrine system. The endocrine system responds slower and its effect is prolonged. It means that it takes a long time, right? It lasts for a long time. I'll repeat that again. The nervous system allows us to respond rapidly to a stimulus, whereas the endocrine system allows us to respond slower. The response of the endocrine system is slower and its effect is prolonged or it lasts longer. Okay, let's go to the second point. So the second point is that the nervous system uses electrical impulses and neurotransmitters to communicate, right? So it uses electrical impulses and neurotransmitters to communicate or to send a message. Whereas when it comes to the endocrine system uses and releases hormones into the bloodstream directly. So the endocrine system is a system of hormones that are communicating with each other, right? So those hormones are secreted directly into the bloodstream, right? So when it comes to the endocrine system, now we're talking about hormones. We're no longer talking about electrical impulses. Okay. And also the nervous system is made up of nerves. It's made up of nerves. What are nerves? Nerves are just bundles of neurons. What are neurons? Neurons are specialized nerve cells. Right? Okay, let's go to the endocrine system. Whereas the endocrine system is made up of glands, as I said in the beginning of this lecture, that the endocrine system is just a system of glands that are working together in order to achieve a certain goal. What's the goal? The goal is to maintain the internal environment, right? To maintain the internal environment in relation to the external environment. Right, to explain more with regards to that. Okay, let's continue. So this is the difference between the nervous system, right? The nervous system and the endocrine system. This is the nervous system. Remember, the nervous system is composed of the brain, right, and the spinal cord, right? The brain and the spinal cord. That's the central nervous system. We call that the central nervous system, right? And anything outside the brain and the spinal cord forms part of the peripheral nervous system. So this is the nervous system as a whole. So the nervous system is composed of the central nervous system, which includes the brain, this is the brain, and the spinal cord. And anything outside the nerves, right, that are outside the central nervous system, they form part of the peripheral nervous system. That's what forms the nervous system. So when it comes to the endocrine system, look at the endocrine system. The endocrine system is just a system of glands, right? As you can see here, this is the thyroid gland, pituitary gland, adrenal gland, right? So it's just a system of glands, even though they're not in order in this picture, but it's just a system of glands that are working together, right? Okay, let's revise the differences between the nervous system and the endocrine system. So the nervous system allows us or responds fast, right? It responds rapidly to a stimulus, whereas the endocrine system responds in a slow manner to a stimulus, right? When it comes to the nervous system, we are speaking of electrical impulses, right? Electrical impulses. So the whole system communicates through or with electrical impulses. Whereas in the endocrine system, we communicate, the body communicates with hormones, using hormones that are secreted directly into the bloodstream. Okay, let's look at the effects of the nervous system. The effects of the nervous system are short term, so they're short term, whereas the effects of the endocrine system are long term. Okay, let's move on. Now, let's go into the difference between the endocrine glands and the exocrine glands, right? The difference between the endocrine glands and the exocrine glands. So, mammals produce secretions from exocrine and endocrine glands. All mammals, they produce secretions from exocrine glands and endocrine glands. Right? Now let's look at the difference between the two glands. So the exocrine glands, they have ducts, whereas the endocrine glands, they are ductless. They don't have ducts. So it means that the exocrine glands, they secrete, right? Or they secrete their secretions within the ducts, whereas the endocrine glands, they secrete their hormones directly into the bloodstream, right? As you can see here, with regards to the exocrine glands, secretions are released on the surface. So they're released on the surface. I hope that makes a lot of sense. Whereas the endocrine glands, the hormones are released into the bloodstream. Okay, now let's look at the examples of exocrine glands rather. So one of the examples of the exocrine glands is sweat glands. And when it comes to the examples with regards to endocrine glands is your pituitary gland. So a pituitary gland secretes hormones directly into the bloodstream. Whereas the sweat glands, they secrete sweat outside of the skin or on the surface of the skin, right? Obviously, there are hormones, rather not hormones, but they are glands that form part of the exocrine and endocrine gland simultaneously. So they perform both functions as an exocrine gland and as an endocrine gland. For example, the pancreas. The pancreas is both an exocrine gland and an endocrine gland. Okay, so exocrine glands. So these are exocrine glands, as you can see. So they secrete their secretions via ducts, right? Via ducts. This is a duct, via ducts, right? And also, their secretions are secreted on the surface, on the surface. Whereas the endocrine glands, they secrete hormones or secretions directly into the blood, right? So they're secreted directly into the blood. So this is the difference, just the picture of the difference between exocrine glands and endocrine glands. So these are important for you to know for your exam. I'll just add I'll just add something so that you can have access to these notes, right? Wherever you are, right? I'll just make them available to you guys. Okay, now let's get into endocrine glands because we are dealing with the endocrine system. How does the endocrine system function? So the endocrine system, it functions as follows. So you have a gland, right? You have a gland that's going to release a hormone, right? As you can see, we have our gland here, our gland, right? And this gland is going to release the hormone directly into the bloodstream, right? And that hormone is secreted directly into the bloodstream and goes to your target cell, or it can be a target organ, right? So you have the gland, right? I don't know whether I can write this correctly. You have a gland. Let's write slow. That's slow, right? I wish I could use this properly. So you have a gland, right? And you need to have a hormone. I'll just write H. You need to have a hormone, right? Then finally, you need to have a target organ. You need to have a target organ, right? So the hormone is secreted directly into the bloodstream and it goes straight to the target organ. Okay, I hope that's clear. Let's continue. Right, so this is the definition of the endocrine system. So the endocrine system is composed of a plethora of glands that secrete hormones into the bloodstream. Thenceforth, the hormones are transported to their target organs. So the hormones are transported directly into the target organs through the bloodstream. What are these hormones? Because I've been mentioning the word hormone without explaining it. Let me explain what are hormones. What are hormones? This is a summarized version, right, of what you'll get in a test book, but it's everything that you need in your exam. Right? It contains each and every detail based on what they ask in your exams most of the time. So what are hormones? Hormones are chemical organic compounds that act as messengers of the body. So they're just messengers. Remember, we said that previously in the previous chapter, the nervous system, what were messengers? What was the system using as messengers? The nervous system was using electrical impulses, but now the body is using hormones. The body is using hormones in order to send messages or communicate, right? Because you use messages as a means of communication. Okay, let's continue. What are functions of these hormones? So some hormones are responsible for reproduction, growth, and development. Now let's go to the second function. Some hormones are responsible or most hormones, they're responsible for the maintenance of the internal environment, right? So they help us maintain the internal environment. And the third function is that hormones, they regulate, right? Some hormones, like for example, thyroxine, it regulates the rate of metabolism. We'll get to thyroxine and how it regulates metabolism when it comes to when we go to homeostasis, right? So let me repeat the functions again. The first function, the reproduction, growth, and development, right? The second function, maintenance of the internal environment. Then the third function is the regulation of metabolism. Okay, let's continue. These are your endocrine glands, right? So this is just a summarized picture of your uh, endocrine glands. Let's go to the first gland. So the first gland that we see here is the hypothalamus, right? So we have the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is just behind your pituitary gland, right? And also it secretes various hormones. We'll get into those hormones. So the hypothalamus is your first um, gland. Then your second gland is your pituitary gland. Just in front of the hypothalamus, you have your pituitary gland. So the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland, they work in coordination and together in order to release certain hormones. Some are released by the hypothalamus and some are released by the pituitary gland. So the second gland you have is your pituitary gland, right? I hope that makes a lot of sense. And the third gland you have is your thyroid gland. Your thyroid gland, right? It's just above your larynx. It's not above your larynx, but it's just it's covering your larynx in your body, right? It's covering your larynx. Okay, so this is the thyroid gland. Let's go to the fourth one. So the fourth uh, gland is your adrenal gland. Just above your adrenal glands are just above your kidneys. They're above your kidneys. We'll get to the functions and the hormones that adrenal glands secrete, right? Then in your stomach, just above your stomach, you have your pancreas, right? Remember, we said this pancreas forms part of the exocrine gland and the endocrine gland because it contains ducts and also it secretes its hormones directly into the bloodstream. For example, the pancreas secretes two hormones that are responsible for regulating sugar levels, right? Which are your insulin and glucagon. Then when it comes to the exocrine part of its function, it secretes the pancreatic juice that helps you digest food. So that's how the pancreas forms part of your exocrine and your endocrine gland. Okay. Now let's go to the next to the next gland. Next gland is the testes. Remember, we did the testes in reproduction. So the testes said that they produce testosterone. I hope you still remember the functions of testosterone, but we'll get to them. But we'll revise them and repeat them again so that you don't forget them. And our final gland is ovaries, right? With regards to females, we also dealt with ovaries in reproduction. Let's continue. Now let's start with the first glands that we dealt with in that picture, which are your hypothalamus and pituitary gland. So this is your hypothalamus. As we said that it's at the back of your pituitary gland, then in front you have your pituitary gland. So this is where they're located. Right? So this is the picture. Okay, let's look at the hormone. So I made a table here, created a table. So this table is divided into three. So we'll have the hormone secreted, right, by the part of the brain, whether can be your hypothalamus or your pituitary gland. And we'll have your target organ, because remember, we said the endocrine system as a whole, you need to have the hormone, the target organ, right? You need to have the gland, the hormone, and the target organ, rather, right? Okay, so we'll have the target organ and also the function of the hormone. Okay, so let's start with the hypothalamus. So the hypothalamus secretes a hormone called ADH, which is your info, it's antidiuretic hormone. Antidiuretic hormone. So what's the target organ of ADH? The target organ of ADH is your kidneys. So it's our kidneys or the kidney, right? And what's its function? What's the function? So it stimulates the reabsorption of water, right? So it stimulates the reabsorption of water. We'll get to osmoregulation, how ADH regulates water in our body. But now we're just still dealing with uh, different hormones and their target organs. Where are they transported to? Remember, they need to be transported to somewhere by the blood. Okay. Now let's go to hormones that are secreted by the pituitary gland. Remember, we said that the pituitary gland and the hypothalamus, they work together. They work hand in hand. Okay. So the pituitary gland secretes TSH, which is your thyroid stimulating hormone. Thyroid stimulating hormone. So what's the target organ? The target organ is the thyroid gland, right? So it's self-defining. So it's a self-defining word. Stimulating hormone, thyroid stimulating hormone, right? So it does what? It stimulates the thyroid gland to secrete thyroxine. It stimulates the thyroid gland to secrete thyroxine. What's the function of thyroxine? It controls metabolism or it regulates metabolism in the body. But we'll get more into that. Okay, let's go to the second function secreted by the pituitary gland. The first one is FSH, and the second one is LH. So let's look at the function of these hormones. So the first function of FSH is that it stimulates the production of follicles in the ovaries. So it stimulates the production of follicles in the ovaries. The second function of FSH is that it stimulates the ovaries to produce estrogen. Remember, estrogen is the hormone that's responsible for secondary sexual characteristics in females or puberty. Okay. Now let's get to the functions of LH. So LH stimulates the ovulation. So it stimulates ovulation, rather. What is ovulation? Ovulation is the moment in day 14 where the graphene follicle ruptures and releases an ovum. And so that's ovulation. So it's stimulated on day 14. So on day 14, the pituitary gland secretes LH, and LH goes to your ovaries to rupture the graphene follicle so that it can release the ova. So LH stimulates ovulation. So what's the second function of LH? LH converts the ruptured graphene follicle to the corpus luteum. Right? This is just a revision. This is just a revision of reproduction. Right? Okay. Now let's go to the next hormone that's secreted by our pituitary gland. So the next hormone is prolactin. Prolactin. So what's the target organ? The target organ is mammary gland. So it's our mammary glands, right? So the mammary glands. So what's the function of the prolactin? So it stimulates the production of milk. What's the process whereby milk is produced in mammary glands? We call that process lactation, right? Okay. Let's go to our final hormone secreted by our pituitary gland. So you have our growth hormone, have the growth hormone. So growth hormone, what's the target organ of growth hormone? So it's the muscle cells and the bones. Muscle cells and the bones. So what's the function of the growth hormone? stimulates the growth of bones and skeletal muscle. Stimulates the growth of bones and skeletal muscle. Okay, let's go to adrenal glands. Let's move on to other glands. Adrenal glands. So remember, we said your adrenal glands are just above the kidney. These are the adrenal glands, not the kidney itself. They're just above the kidney. They're above the kidney. So these are the parts, structures that form part of the adrenal gland. So you have your capsule outside, right, and your blood vessels inside the adrenal gland. You have your medulla, right? So this is your medulla and your cortex, right? It's not important for you to know the structures of the adrenal gland. Just have to know uh, what hormones do they secrete and the function of those hormones. Okay, so I made it easy for you. I made a table, right? So we'll focus on the target organs, right, and the function of the hormones that are secreted by the adrenal gland. So the first hormone that's secreted by the adrenal glands is your adrenaline, right? So what's the function of the adrenaline? Let's start with the target organ first. So the first target organ that adrenaline is transported to is the heart, right? So it does what in the heart? Remember, this adrenaline is a flight or fight hormone. So when you get into instances whereby you're chased by a dog or you're fighting, right, or you're running away from something that terrifies you, your adrenal gland secretes adrenaline into the blood, and your adrenaline will go to various or different organs in the body. Right, the first organ it goes to is your heart, right, and it does what to your heart? It increases your heart rate, right? It increases your heart rate. Okay, let's go to the second target organ. The second target organ is the liver, right? It's the liver. So it does what in the liver? It stimulates, right, the conversion of glycogen to glucose. Glycogen to glucose. So glucose is sugar. Why does it stimulate the conversion of glycogen to glucose? So that you can have the energy to run or the energy to fight. Remember, we need glucose for energy. So glucose is used by the cells, right, in order to produce energy. Remember in grade 11, cellular respiration. So glucose is used by the body in order to produce what? Energy. And when you're in a flight or fight state, you need that energy. And also, why does your adrenaline increase your heart rate? It increases your heart rate because some body parts in your body, they need more blood. Remember, what's the function of the heart? It pumps blood to different body parts. So that's why it's important for adrenaline to increase your blood rate, your heart rate, so that the blood gets to areas that that are necessary for you to fight or run at a quicker rate. Okay, so let's go to the third target organ, your skeletal muscles. Obviously, you need your skeletal muscles whenever you're running or fighting, right? So it does what to your skeletal muscle? It increases the blood supply to your skeletal muscle. Increases the blood supply so that you can be able to be mobile, to move, right, quickly or run faster. What's the next one? What's the next organ it goes to? It goes to your eye muscles, right? What happens to your eye? So we did this in the eye, right? So the pupil dilates. So it means that it becomes wider. Your pupil becomes wider because you need to see clearly whenever you're fighting, whenever you're running. Okay, what's the next target organ? So the next target organ is the skin, right? It's the skin. So it does what to the skin? To the skin. So it decreases the blood supply to the skin, right? Why does it decrease the blood supply to the skin? So that more blood is sent to other body parts, right? Or to other organs. So other organs, they need the blood. So hence, there's a decreased blood supply to the skin, right? Like the brain, more blood needs to go to the brain whenever you're running. You need to think more clearly. So more blood with oxygen needs to go to the brain. So the body needs to decrease the blood supply to other body parts or to other organs. so that it can provide necessary or sufficient blood to other body parts. Okay, what's another target organ? Is the lungs, right? The lungs. So the lungs, it does what to the lungs? It increases the breathing rate. Why does it increase the breathing rate? Because you need more oxygen whenever you're running. So whenever you're running, you need more oxygen. So hence, adrenaline increases your breathing rate. And also, the last target organ it goes to is the body cell, right? The body cell. So what happens to your body cells? So your body cells will increase metabolism, or to be specific, cellular respiration. Remember, so your body cells, they will use this glucose that was converted by your liver in order to produce what? Energy. So metabolism just refers to the cellular respiration, right? Processes that are used in the body in order to produce energy. So, what is metabolism as a whole? It's just a blanket term. Metabolism are all biological processes that are taking place in your body. Okay, let's look at the second hormone that's produced or secreted by the adrenal gland. So the second one is your aldosterone. Aldosterone. So your aldosterone, what's the target organ? So aldosterone is transported to the kidney. And it does what to the kidney? It regulates the salt concentration in the blood. So it regulates salt concentration in the blood, right? Okay, so we're done with the adrenal gland. Now let's go to productive organs. So these ones are easy because we've already dealt with them in term one. So these are your productive organs, right? So with regards to females, you have your ovaries. So you have your ovaries. And with regards to males, you have your testes. Okay? Let's focus on the ovaries. So ovaries, they secrete estrogen. What's the function of estrogen? So estrogen triggers secondary sexual characteristics in females, right? Simply put, puberty. And the next function of estrogen is that it thickens the endometrium lining during the menstrual cycle. So it thickens the endometrium lining during the menstrual cycle. It's actually at the beginning of the menstrual cycle. Okay? The second hormone that's secreted by ovaries is the progesterone. Right? What's the function of progesterone? So it further thickens the endometrium lining in order to maintain pregnancy. I hope you still remember that function. Okay, let's go to testosterone. Let's go to testes. So these are your glands with regards to males. So what happens to testes? So the testes, they secrete testosterone. Now what's the function of testosterone? It stimulates sperm production in the body. Stimulates sperm production in the body. Right? Now let's go to the second function of the testes. The second function is that it's responsible for secondary sexual characteristics in males, puberty. Right? We won't go into those secondary sexual characteristics. We did them in reproduction. Okay? I tried to put as much color in these notes, right, as possible. So this is the first part of the endocrine system. We'll release the second part. We'll get into other glands. The reason why I did not discuss other glands is because they form part of homeostasis. Like the thyroid gland forms part of homeostasis, right? How does thyroxine and TSH work together in order to maintain our internal environment? And also, I did not include the pancreas because the pancreas forms part of homeostasis and also feedback mechanism, where the two hormones, glucagon and insulin, work together in order to control the levels of what? Sugar. So, hence, I started with these hormones so that I break it down piece by piece because this is a very complex and complicated topic to a lot of students. So I needed to just break it down and just introduce you to it firstly before anything else. Right? I'll just put a link of these notes in the description box. So yeah, thank you guys. Thank you. It's not a long video for you to watch. It's just a short video.